Hey.
You ready?
I tried to do something different than hey, Jake.
Hey.
Did you see it coming?
Very. It's fantastic. Hey.
Hey.
That was the intro. Success.
There it was. Last time you got garbage, and this time you got
Hey.
hey. And if you say it, no matter how many different ways, it all sounds like hey.
Hey. Hey. Hey. Oh, hey.
I know one of our listeners got a kick out of that.
A horse?
No, out of the garbage.
Oh, I
Yeah.
thought you meant hay. I was like, a horse? Obviously, horse is like hay, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Totally.
Yeah, totally.
So, the book today.
Book today.
Are we just going to jump right into it?
Let's go.
Oh, wait, I have one more thing to tell you.
Okay.
People love you.
Oh.
I just want you to
I mean,
know.
you had one person tell you that, so.
No, I've had multiple people now.
Oh.
You're popular, man.
I mean, why do you think that I'm not in every episode of Staying Connected?
You can just do those interviews.
No. Nope. Not. I don't want that. Don't put that juju on me.
Okay.
You have too much hard to job.
Anyway, thanks everyone for listening and being dedicated listeners. I would like to offer a challenge this week. Oh, Jake's face is like, he said ooh, but he didn't say it. He said ooh. He looks like.
Well, I'm curious
excited.
about what the challenge. Like, can I do it right now? Is it like 10 jumping jacks?
Well, I mean, no.
Okay.
But I mean, you can do those if you want.
All right. I'm
As long
not.
as your doctor approves.
I haven't been to
Your
a doctor in a very
exercise
long
plan.
time, so we're fine.
Okay.
I am my own doctor, remember?
Yes, totally.
My own professional.
From a previous episode where the disclaimer was, Jake's not a doctor.
And I got offended by that.
Very.
Yeah.
Very offended.
Yep. All of the school I didn't go to.
Yes.
Okay. What's your
All
challenge?
for nothing.
All for nothing.
If you like this show, share it with 3 friends this week. That's my challenge.
Or your grandmother will be cursed if you don't forward this email to 10 people. Do you remember those?
Yes! My grandmother, I don't know how many times it sent me that.
Yeah.
Oh, man. Well, I didn't intend for it to be that kind of challenge.
There you go, listeners. You must share this with 3 people. Otherwise, your grandmother will become cursed or curse you. Yep.
Better listen to Jake.
Yep. Wherever they are in this existence, they will curse you or they will be cursed.
So, Apocalypse Factory.
Speaking of curses, Apocalypse Now.
Apocalypse Factory.
What's Apocalypse Now?
I don't know.
Okay.
I feel like it sounds familiar.
Yeah, maybe a game?
Maybe.
Okay, but what's this book is Apocalypse Factory.
Yeah, Plutonium and the Making of the Atomic Age.
That's correct.
That's what it's called.
Yeah, I have the book on my phone, the cover.
You do?
Yeah.
Okay, because I was like pulling it up right now.
Yeah, I have it.
Okay, show it to me.
Well, you're far away, and it's.
Well, why don't you describe the cover?
Okay, I'll describe the cover. So, by the way, this book is by Steve Olson, and it's a black and white picture of what looks like a very early nuclear reactor.
How can you tell that from the...
I can see the stacks,
Oh, okay.
like the tall stacks. I see water towers, and we all know that water and nuclear stuff mix pretty well to like make sure it's cold or something.
Cooling towers.
Cooling towers, yep. And then it also looks like there's a bunch of electricity running out of this place. Like if you were to ask me what I thought the first atomic bomb was built in, I would say this area here.
Oh, you got all that from that picture.
I mean, I don't know if I got it.
Well,
I'm
you
sure I
did.
nailed it.
You did.
Really?
Almost, yeah. Yeah, almost. But I looked at that cover, and the first thing I saw was Apocalypse Factory, Plutonium, and the Making of the Atomic Age.
Uh-huh.
And the picture You might hear dogs in the background.
You will hear dogs.
4 dogs, even.
Today was a good day for our dogs to play together. So there are 4 dogs in our studio playing.
Right here.
Yes, right here.
They're actually 2 floors above us, and if you still hear them, that's the magic of a podcast.
It's your own fault. So, Apocalypse cover, you didn't get nuclear.
I barely looked at the picture.
Really?
It was like a black and white picture of a factory, and I was like, oh, it's a factory.
Well, all black and white pictures look foreboding.
Oh, I didn't find it foreboding.
Really?
I probably should have.
It says Apocalypse Factory and shows a black and white picture. Right?
Yeah.
Very foreboding.
Yeah, I think it would have been more foreboding with the mushroom cloud.
Potentially. Yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe. Oh, these dogs
Dogs
are crazy.
are cracking me up. They're just going to egg each other on.
Yeah, your fault, listeners.
Yeah, no, I didn't find it foreboding. I was like, oh, this should be informational.
Was it informational?
Oh, yeah, it was, for sure.
Tell me about this book.
Okay. So, this book, like, I did listen to this book instead of read it. I've been doing that a lot lately because I've got a lot going on in my life. And I will say, like, I had trouble focusing on this book, like the details of this book, as much as I normally focus on a book when I started it. The narrator was great. There was a lot of sciencey stuff and a lot of, like, this person and describing their life and how they entered the picture and all that. And I was just like, I'm never going to remember all these names and also what's happening. Like, it was a lot of that at the beginning. But the author, Steve Olson, grew up in Othello, Washington, which I guess is not far from Hanford. And he makes the argument that Hanford was actually the most important facility for the atomic age. Mm-hmm. And then goes into why, basically. Like, the rest of the book is about why this facility is so important to the nuclear age.
Why was this facility so important to the nuclear age?
Well, because that's where the plutonium was made. So I learned so much about this. So just for, like, a brief history, a very brief, light history of a very heavy topic. So there are 2 atomic bombings, Hiroshima and Nagasaki. I knew of, like, one, like, have you heard of the Manhattan Project?
Yes.
Okay, so that was, like, the nuclear bomb project.
Okay.
And I knew I'd heard of Los Alamos in association with that. And I don't know that I had heard of Oak Ridge or Hanford. Had you heard of those names? Okay. So, yeah, I've heard a lot about Los Alamos and not about anything else. But there were actually 3 facilities that were part of the major testing and development for the nuclear bombs. And the first nuclear bomb that was dropped on, a nuclear bomb or atomic bomb, pretty much, it's technically an atomic.
A death boom. Yeah.
Whatever, a death boom, yeah. The first one was dropped on Hiroshima, and that one was uranium-based. And at Hanford, they developed and manufactured this plutonium, which is subsequently how they made every other bomb.
Wow.
So the uranium bomb that was dropped on Hiroshima was harder to make, from what I gathered, harder to make and took longer to make. And when they discovered plutonium and then refined it and were able to discover that they could make it implode, they could make a more powerful bomb, and they could make several more, like every few weeks or something.
You know that,
like a year.
You know that, like, okay.
Do you have goosebumps? Because
when you go to buy a handgun,
mm-hmm.
and in some states you have to wait 3 days for a cool-off period, right? Maybe this was physics' way of saying y'all need to chill.
Yeah.
Because you're making something super deadly.
I learned so much. Like, I cannot overemphasize that.
Mm-hmm.
And this book was, like, the first note I wrote down on here to discuss today was holy fuck, that was awful. That was just awful. That was my first note on here. Number one, holy fuck, that was awful. And he was very, very good at describing like the scientists and everything that they were doing and why they were doing it, and really painting a picture of this World War II time period where they were racing to develop these bombs first. Because when they discovered, I think it was when they discovered that uranium, like they could split atoms, the scientists had to stop publishing. Because the implications of that were like, wow, this could be used as a weapon. We don't want anybody else to discover this. And so they did all their science work but did not publish anything, which was a huge indicator that, hey, somebody's figured something out, because all of a sudden the landscape is empty for scientific literature on this topic. And they were basically racing to develop it. They were fearful that Nazi Germany would create that first.
That's correct.
Yeah. And he did a really, really good job of painting that picture, and also giving you like insight into the different characters. I mean, they're people, into the different people that were part of this history. So the guy that was in charge of Hanford, Groves, he essentially was like a very like get things done, always be number one, very like raised in a very competitive household. And what was so like devastatingly striking in this was the dropping of the second bomb. The realization, and he writes about this in the book, that Groves had spent billions, like I think it was billions of dollars, at least millions, of government money, which is like people's tax money, on this making of a plutonium implosion bomb. And regardless if Hiroshima was severe enough to end the war, he was going to drop that second bomb because they needed it to be worth something, that it wasn't wasted money. They needed to know if the bomb worked.
What a terrible reason.
I know.
To kill lots of people.
Yeah, like I was just floored by that. I was totally floored by that. And that's where like my holy fuck, that was awful comes in. And I wrote this down, like there were disagreements between the scientists. Like when they realized like how devastating the implications of this could be, there was a whole panel. They tried to figure out how to drop the bomb and like where to drop it and what would be most appropriate. And some of the scientists really very strongly believed that either it shouldn't be used at all, or that there should be some kind of scheduled demonstration where no casualties would come of it, and where Japan could see the bomb dropped, and hopefully, like they believed that that would be enough to say, hey, if we don't end this war, we will drop one of these on you.
Right.
And ultimately they decided against it for a multitude of reasons, but essentially they weren't sure that that was going to be enough. They also weren't entirely positive that it would work. And the way that they chose the sites for the bomb dropping were horrible. Like, really, really horrible. Do you know anything about that?
No.
I wrote down.
Katie,
yeah. Okay.
Tell me the math that goes into determining the value of human life.
They didn't do that math.
But that's what sounds like what you're about to say, right? How did you determine the maximum impact, or the like where to drop the bomb? Where's most appropriate?
The way that they did it was they wanted to choose a Japanese city that had some military base on it or some military significance, that was also surrounded by lots of civilians. And they wanted to do that they wanted to pick sites that would cause the most psychological damage, to instill in them the fear of another one so that they could end the war.
But they dropped the second one anyway.
Right, it was only 3 days after Hiroshima.
Yeah. Did they give them the chance to
No.
react and say, we're done?
I think they had just started, like, figuring out what happened at Hiroshima when the Nagasaki bomb was dropped.
Dang.
Right. Like, and they had, this book had it wasn't a first-hand account, but it was, you know? Like, it was about a doctor who was there, like, in his office, which happened to be surrounded by concrete. And he was there, like, at the bombing and survived and was part of the whole, like, figuring out, like, trying to help people, checking on his patients. Like, I will not provide all the descriptions in here because they were horrible. But it was a really good, like, it was an important reminder that, like, these decisions had really severe consequences. And what was shocking to me is at the time, and I don't know how many, like, I wasn't in World War II. There's always a bit, no, I wasn't. Anybody out there who's like, yeah, Katie lived through World War II? No. No, I didn't. I wasn't alive back then. And I think it's easy to look back on stuff and be like, they shouldn't have done that, right? And maybe they shouldn't have. Like, I think some of the decisions they made were truly despicable. Maybe despicable is a really harsh word, but the killing of, it was like 100,000 at Hiroshima and almost another 100,000 at Nagasaki, maybe more because of the aftermath. The killing of that many people without discrimination, without warning that they're going to drop a bomb, without, like, that all, I mean, this probably sparked the discussions of what's fair in war in the world. And I know that's why the United Nations was formed. But it was just like, I don't know where I was going with that. Do you remember?
No, but now I'm thinking about how we used to have rules in war. If you go back to, like, the Civil War or any of the wars previous to that, where people were slapping each other instead of dropping bombs on each other, they would stop war for tea, right? And
this is so much different than that.
That was a big deal back then, I guess, right?
Right.
Is you know.
Don't attack during tea time?
Well, yeah. Pause so everyone can have their tea before they go kill each other.
Are you serious?
Yeah.
Huh.
And the people who were fighting the, I don't want to say commanders, I don't know what the role was, but the, I guess the two people who had lots of human bodies to go fight each other would go and discuss policy and stuff while they were fighting. It's like, you know, it's not so different than what we do now, right?
Yeah.
But also, holy shit.
Right.
Yeah.
It's a lot to take in and think about. And there was really, like, no matter how many times that I read about the atomic bombs or see pictures of the atomic bombs, or, you know, it just is really, really hard to have all of that understanding. Like, it's hard to comprehend destruction on that large of a magnitude. Like, I know it's there, and I've seen pictures. I know it's horrible, and that it's a really, really powerful weapon. But also, like, it's just really hard to picture it.
It's kind of like picturing $1 billion.
Yes. What does $1 million look like in a room?
Billion.
$1 billion.
Yeah. How many $100 bills is it, right?
Yeah.
How many pallets of $100 bills is it?
It's crazy.
Yeah.
And I know where I was going before. What was really astounding was polls generally, like, right after or like a year after the bombings, the vast majority of Americans thought that the bombings were the right thing to do.
Not surprised.
Right, and that was surprising to me. Like, it wasn't surprising, but astounding, just, like, the sheer magnitude of, like, for everybody to, I mean, the war was, okay, I can understand where that came from, because the war was so bad. And earlier in the last few months, I read Unbroken, which was a prisoner of war situation in World War II, and the guy was held in a prison camp in Japan. And so I know how horrible that experience was, and it was an interesting pairing reading about the other side. Like, the other side of, like, he's in this prisoner of war camp, and very emaciated, like, horrible stuff happening to him and his colleagues. And what is it? They're not I mean, it's not like he's a work colleague. It's him and the rest of his troop, brigade, whatever that word is. They're dying in those prisoner of war camps. They're not being fed. They're emaciated. It's horrible. And from the other side, this story takes place in America while they're trying to end what was going on there.
Mm-hmm.
And so I can see why the poll would be like, oh yeah, we support this. But it's still astounding. Like, it made me wonder what was the understanding of how destructive these bombs were.
Right.
And then it threw us into this Cold War where we were just like making more bombs, trying to beat Russia on how many bombs we have. It was crazy. This book was crazy. So he takes you through all that. He takes you through the discovery of uranium splitting and the discovery of the plutonium. And there was something about graphite piles and building the first nuclear reactors. That was the part where I was like, it was in my ear, and I would have preferred to read it on paper to really understand it better.
Yeah, soak it in.
Yeah. But that wasn't the way that life was this week. Then he takes you through the building of Hanford and how super, super secret this was. Like, most of the people working at Hanford did not know what they were working on. They didn't even know that they were working with radioactivity. Like, they just did not know. And then he takes you through the disagreements between the scientists. Like, the one scientist even brought a petition to try to bring it to Truman to basically be like, do not drop this bomb. Like, this is not a humanitarian thing to do. And it ended up sitting on somebody's desk high up and never opened before they dropped it.
Mm-hmm.
It was very, very interesting that, that it made me feel good that, like, there was some second thought with a lot of them. Like, is this the right thing to do? Because I don't think human life is something to take lightly.
Right.
And
life in general.
Yeah, life in general is not something to take lightly. So he takes you through the whole bombing, the scenario, like what happened on the ground for Nagasaki. It was basically chosen because the weather there was better than the other two targets.
Jesus.
Right, they tried to drop it on the first target, and their top target or whatever, and weather was too bad, and they were getting shot up from the ground. So then they went to the next one, and they were like, oh my gosh, we could see it, let's drop it now. And that's how Nagasaki was chosen. Other than the fact that it was originally chosen to be on the list of possible targets because it had a great amount of civilians around the military thing. And that was just, that was horrible. And then he takes you through all of the things after, like the nuclear reactor that was built at Hanford and how it's like the biggest nuclear power plant at the time. And the decision, I think they ended up deciding to close that down because it's too easy of a target. Close to the shore. Right. Relatively close to the shore by airplane. And then there's some reflection at the end of, what these people did with their lives afterwards. Mm-hmm. And things that they said afterwards about how they felt about it. And there was a quote from Oppenheimer about if there was life out in the universe that was smart enough and advanced enough in their technology to encounter us, he felt that the most likely scenario was that they would have already destroyed themselves because they would have been advanced enough to discover this technology and either destroy the resources on their planet or kill each other. Mm-hmm. Like, basically, like, it has such great power to destroy our species that they probably don't exist anymore. Or that scenario will never happen. Like, we will not interact with... He didn't think that we would ever interact with life forms that were technology, like, as technologically advanced as we are, because he thought they would all destroy themselves because they would have discovered this. Yeah. It was a heavy book.
This is the epitome of books I don't read.
I know.
I'm having a hard time dealing with this book.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that we should have a hard time dealing with this book.
Yes.
Because the reality is it wouldn't take much to destroy everything.
Yep.
And that's a super scary thing.
Makes you appreciate the efforts to prevent this technology from falling into the wrong hands. Mm-hmm. And then immediately I'm thinking about how glorified violence is.
Right.
It's everywhere. Every movie, every cartoon, every video game, every book, right? You read, it's about violence and fighting and everything. We're so obsessed with it.
Yeah.
And then people, I think, might lose sight that that has an impact, right? Mm-hmm. You're so obsessed with fighting,
Your first reaction is to fight.
Yeah, your first reaction is to fight. Yeah. And then hurt other people, and then other people hurt other people, and then finally you got a big dog fight, and the biggest dog goes woof, and like hurts 3 small dogs, and then all the other dogs stop fighting. Our dogs are barking. But I'm just thinking, right?
That analogy got very specific.
Yeah, it got really specific. Because it's like, this is the equivalent of we're throwing sticks and stones at each other, and then someone shows up with like a fucking bazooka.
Right.
It just blows everyone away.
Yeah.
And then they're like, whoa, that's kind of dangerous.
Totally. One of the things that was really satisfied my curiosity about this age is that I had always, it's not like I'm always thinking about atomic bombs, right? Like, I don't go around in my day-to-day thinking like, wow, there's atomic bombs in the world. Not like Samantha Irby, where she's just getting high and thinking about whales. Right. I'm not just thinking about atomic bombs.
Okay.
Although there is an argument that we should all be thinking about these, because I think it's very easy to just put it out of mind and let somebody else deal with that.
We should, by the way, listeners, we should absolutely all do that. Put it out of our minds. We should all go on vacation and not think about this at all. That is the healthiest thing to do.
Disagree.
For my own mental sanity, all of our listeners should not think about this.
Listeners,
bury their heads in the sand.
Do what's best for you.
And forget the rest of the world exists.
Where was I going?
I have no idea.
I had always wondered, how did they test this thing? Where was it safe for them to test this thing?
Yeah,
how did they get close to it?
Did they put really tiny atoms next to each other?
The tiniest atoms?
Yeah, they've got 2 tweezers and they're just touching atoms together, and they're like, "Oh, look, it's sparks. Let's get some bigger atoms to make bigger sparks." How did that work?
I don't remember. That was part of the I'm losing focus on this book because it's in my ear. But the actual, once they had developed the bomb and had to test its efficacy, basically, whether or not it would actually detonate, this book did satisfy my curiosity there.
Okay.
Because they, in Alamogordo, New Mexico, is where they tested it. And I didn't realize that the monument is over, I think it's near White Sands National Park.
Oh, is it?
And I've been there briefly. I didn't know it was there. I kind of wish that I had gone to see it. But they set up shelters 6 miles from the detonation site.
Okay.
And they had it detonate at 5:30 in the morning. Originally, it was planned to be 4 o'clock in the morning. And the brightness and the sound, the boom, could be heard or felt more than 100 miles from the explosion.
Holy shit.
So citizens heard about it, they just heard the noise and the flash, and people said it was brighter. It was so much brighter than daylight, it was just insane. But that's how they did it. Out in the desert, 6 miles away, they detonated it to be safe. And they had all written their wills and stuff that
I bet.
just in case.
Yeah.
Because they had no idea what was good. It was 6 miles enough. They didn't know.
They couldn't have tried it with smaller atoms?
Maybe less plutonium.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't even know if it was as big as the Nagasaki bomb. Right?
It probably had to be big enough to prove a theory.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. But more than 100 miles, like, broke my brain. That's like a bomb going off here in Seattle and feeling it past Mount Rainier.
Mm-hmm.
Or, like, down in Centralia. I mean, how many miles is Portland from Seattle?
126.
Well, there you go. It's like dropping a bomb in Seattle and feeling it and seeing it in Portland.
Yeah.
Broke my brain. So this is a heavy book. It was very informational. It was written really, really well. I really liked it. I would like to read it again so I can understand better how the nuclear reactors work.
On paper?
Right. Yeah.
Don't Google it.
I actually did earlier.
How to split plutonium. Like, okay, let me take some notes.
Right. But this is super scary that this stuff is out here. And there's not a lot to laugh about this at all. Like, zero. Jake's ready to move on to fiction.
This is very not my book. I can't.
Yeah.
Because it's just so much death and stuff. And then, it's just more death. And then eventually it's more death. And then, more death. So why are we doing this? I mean, I get it. Like at a macroeconomic scale, I get it, right?
Mm-hmm.
But it's like, why are we doing this, y'all? Can we just chill? Can we just going to work's hard enough? Can we just acknowledge that and then stop fucking with each other?
Yeah.
Can we just chill? Jake for president, 2024. New party. The y'all motherfuckers need to chill party.
I love that.
Yeah.
That's hilarious.
Yep. Everyone gets a therapist.
Oh my God. Not enough therapists in the world.
It creates a job market. I'm creating jobs with my campaign. Okay? For everyone gets a therapist.
Uh-huh.
And y'all motherfuckers need to chill out. Look, weed is legal now. Y'all, we don't need to be dropping bombs on each other.
I love you. Just so much head in the sand.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's funny. And there was something else in here that was shocking. Okay, so during this time, during World War II, FDR died.
Okay.
And actually, as heavy as these books are that I read, I really enjoy reading them. I think they're really important.
Yeah, you're weird.
Yeah, I am weird. But, we all learn the presidents when we're in elementary school or middle school or whenever.
You mean we forget them?
And then we forget them.
Yeah.
I don't remember what all of them did and when they were and who was before the other one and what the significance was.
Wasn't FDR the one that drowned in the tub?
He died he had polio.
Right.
And so I don't remember how exactly he died, but he did die in his warm springs, at the warm springs.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. He had become sick and went there for treatment and spent a couple weeks there and then died. I can't remember if it was a heart attack or cerebral hemorrhage. There were a few deaths in this book that were by cerebral hemorrhage, and I don't remember if FDR was that.
What is a cerebral hemorrhage?
Brain bleed.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Cerebral brain hemorrhage bleeding.
Hemorrhaging.
Yep.
Cerebral brain, yeah.
Yep. But then Truman took over. And what I like is that this helps me, these kinds of books help me solidify, who's who or who was who in politics, right?
Mm.
We know the major ones.
You're learning your presidents.
Right, I'm learning all my presidents.
FDR died, and then Truman came and, dropped 2 bombs on Japan.
Yeah, okay, so apparently, according to this book, Truman was under the impression, he had they kind of assured him, no need to pay attention to this very much.
What?
Right. And so he was under the assumption that these were military bases that they were bombing and that they were not bombing civilians.
Your what is the president, Master Chief?
Right.
Your Master Commander Chief is ignorant.
Blissfully unaware.
Yeah. Wow.
Right.
Was he mad?
I think after the second bomb, the plan was just to keep bombing.
What?
Right. The plan was just going to be, well, we can make all these bombs now. We're going to keep bombing. And Truman put a stop to that. And then I guess he said, like, no more bombs are going to go without my direct approval.
Well, that's nice.
Yeah, way to go, Truman. But also, like,
Do a
I
deeper
feel like
dive.
that, yeah, I feel like that role requires a bit more knowledge of what's actually happening. Like, it's good to have people in your cabinet who can direct things that are going on, but something as big as 100,000 people being killed instantaneously by a bomb, or half of them being killed instantaneously by a bomb, and then the rest of them dying in the weeks and months after due to radiation poisoning.
Yeah.
A little bit more responsibility, man.
I have a question for you.
Yeah.
Would you rather die instantaneously or by radiation poisoning?
Instantaneously.
Yeah, me too.
For sure.
Yeah.
I mean, when I was hearing about, this is going to be graphic, but when I was hearing about radiation poisoning in this book, they didn't know what it was at the time. So, the author's taking you through the doctor, like, putting things together, because they didn't have a word for it yet. And realizing, like, these people that had survived, they just kept getting sicker and sicker, and they were internally bleeding, like, lots of internal bleeds.
Doesn't your skin fall off too?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, your skin falls off. He got little, like, essentially petechiae, like subdural bleeds, which are like the little bruises and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And what was crazy about that is, like, I feel like that's my genetic condition on steroids.
Wait.
So I was reading this and I'm like, this is fucked up.
If the atomic bombs cause VEDS, how do we reverse that to cure VEDS?
I don't think it causes VEDS. I don't know, though. The way the tissue was just falling apart was just so reminiscent, And
Yes.
I'm sure it's on a greater level. Or at least, like, much faster moving and hard to stop. It's like a life lived with VEDS packed into a very short period of time.
How do they cure radiation poisoning? Do they, like, drink iodine or something?
I don't know. No idea. At the time, they didn't. And so it wasn't part of the scope of this book.
Like eat lead or something like that, right?
I would think barium, maybe.
Barium?
No, maybe not barium. No, definitely not barium. I don't know. I think that's one of the crazy, like, horrible things about it. One of the many crazy, horrible things about it. So anyway, if this is the kind of book that you're into, listener, and you like learning about presidents and war and real things that go on in our world and why these things are important to know about, read this book.
No.
Jake's over here shaking his head. If that's not you, don't read the book.
No. This should have never happened.
This interview? Like this episode?
No, this episode's fine.
Okay.
We're solving world problems by everyone chilling out. But the dropping the bombs and stuff,
It's horrible.
I mean, you say, oh, it shouldn't have happened. Well, you had a bunch of people in, like, concentration camps and everything, right? And all of that. And it's like, okay, well, that should have not happened.
Right.
It's
None
like,
of
well,
this should have happened.
Maybe Hitler should have actually been, like, a good artist. Maybe none of this would have happened if he had just sold his art instead of, like, becoming an insane person.
I listened to an incredible episode of NPR this week that really helped me understand Israel and the Jewish people and the origins of the situation that we're in today.
Oh.
It was an NPR episode called, I think it was The Rise of Zionism
Okay.
in Israel or something. It was very interesting. Anybody out there who's listened to it, let us know.
But they also did it to Buddhists.
Yeah. In World War, yeah. I mean, we had concentration camps for Japanese people here in the U.S., didn't we?
I think that was unrelated to the Buddhist thing, though. I think the Buddhist thing, and I'm totally misspeaking, maybe a Chinese thing.
Oh. There's so much horrible shit in the world.
Yes.
Yeah. There is.
That's awful.
And I think that it brought... Like, I finished it this morning. So, there will probably be more, like, afterthought and thoughts kind of, like, coalescing in my brain over the next few weeks as I continue to think about this and the implications of it. But in general, I think it helped me, I don't want to say understand the significance of, but it helped me realize the implications of what would happen if we stopped being involved in world affairs. Like if we all just stopped being, not we all, but like if the United Nations didn't exist, if all the countries just went off on their own and then just decided like we'll handle things on our own, you know, and there was no effort to resolve conflict, the realization of how close we are to this as a possibility, especially with current wars going on, like that was always kind of on my brain. Like it always has the potential to expand. But holy shit, it could be really bad. It's already really bad, but it could be really, like I would never want to see an atomic bomb dropped in my life, you know?
Right.
So, yeah, it just made me realize how close that we really are to all of this on a daily basis and how blissfully unaware we are.
Bliss. I'm over here. Bliss. We're on two sides of this one.
So what's our next book, Jake?
Interestingly, it's about another way that the world falls apart.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, it's called The Mistress by P.A. Stockwell.
Cool.
And it's, if you're interested in AI, this will be the episode for you.
Oh, no.
Yes. Why did we choose these books? If you love AI, you think it's the best thing in the world, someone out there agrees with you. It's not me. But we're going to talk about it next week.
Okay. Cool. I guess we'll, do we have anything else? Nothing else, right?
Bye.
Jake
I'm
is
done.
done.
I'm done. I can't handle it.
Bye.
Bye.